Earth. Have you ever wondered how many grains of sand there are on our beaches in this world? I have a lot of times. I live real close to Gonzales Beach, just right across the street. We go over there 3, 4, 5 times a week with our kids and dog. So, mathematicians at the University of Hawaii tried to guess how many grains of sand are on the world's beaches. And they took actually a spoonful of sand, counted all the grains in one little teaspoon of sand, and then they expanded it out exponentially and grew it out. And so I won't even ask you if you want to guess. But what they guesstimated, through all their calculations, is that there is approximately, of all the sand on our beaches in the world, 7 quintillion, 5 quadrillion grains of sand. In other words, there's 7.5 billion grains of sand. A lot. That's a lot of sand. In our own Milky Way galaxy, there are approximately 400 billion stars. 400 billion. That's a lot. The Hubble telescope can detect approximately 80 billion other galaxies out there, and they believe that the number is about 125. That's just what the Hubble has already detected or will detect. They're projecting. And scientists know that there are many more galaxies out there. If they use the Milky Way as a typical number of stars in each one of these 80 billion plus galaxies out there, when all is said and done, for every grain of sand on Earth, there is at least 100 stars in the universe. Now here's why I set that up. I want you to hear this. So if we are indeed 1 grain of sand on this human beach, then that means there are 6.8 billion human perceptions. When we operate from a human-based egoism, one can easily believe that their own particular grain of sand is more important than other grains of sand, or millions of other grains of sand. But when we operate from a spiritual-based perception, we understand that all grains of sand are not only equal, but are all interconnected. Isn't that great? Can you imagine that for every grain of sand, just right here in Victoria, for every little tiny grain that you pick up, there's at least 100 stars, planets, Earth, moons out there. Not Earth, planets. Isn't that awesome? So how wrapped up do we get in our one little perception? How much energy do we spend trying to get those closest to us to fit into our perception of how we see things? How much time? And when somebody steps out of our own perception of how we think and how we have determined life should be, what do we do with that? Are we okay with it? Or do we try to bring them right back into how our perception of it should be? This is how you should live your life. As parents, we want to do that continuously with our children. It's hard not to. I find myself being challenged with it all the time with Liberty. I just went through 4 days of having Liberty all to myself. What an opportunity. For you men that have children, if you've never spent 4 days alone with your own child, wow, did you miss? Did you miss? And at 49 years old, it was the first experience for me to be solely responsible for another person's life. So as Liberty is becoming more exploratory, more adventurous, it's important to me that I don't shrink her down on how I think life should be, but that I just try to keep it as broad and as big as it can. And it was really pointed out to me yesterday when I was up at Hollywood Park on Fairfield there, on the swing. And we've been putting Liberty on the swing since 6 months, I don't know, maybe 4 months of age, but somewhere 4 to 6 months we put her on. And from day one, I've never been one of those parents that just kind of rocks them just a little bit. I mean, it was just from day one, just like this. Hi, because I'm tall, so I'm going to hike. And that never fazed her. Never fazed her. Now, at 16 months, it's just I can push her as hard as I want, just sitting there. So here's this child, they're having a birthday party, 1-year birthday party for this child. And they put this child in the swing set, in the baby seat or baby swing next to Liberty. And here's the parents. And Liberty, mind you, for the last 9 months, when she's about, I know for sure, 6 months old, we're just swinging as hard as we could. But here's the parents with this 1-year-old little boy. They're pushing her about this far because they were afraid. Do you see how that starts developing that perception of that child? And the dad was helping it on the gym, or on all the playground equipment. And here's my daughter, 16 months old. She climbs up the thing where the big kids go. And she gets on the slide that spirals around by herself, slides down it, falls down a little bit, has a hard time stopping, gets back up, and right up again. And the next age of kids that are doing it are like 8, 9 years old, and she's standing there waiting for her turn and all this stuff, figured it all out. Here's that 1-year-old. The parents are just kind of barely helping it on every little. Do you see how we can shrink down a child's perception so easily that they need to constantly be based in fear, not trusting themselves? If there's one thing I can say about spiritual perception and how we know we're coming from a spiritual perception and human perception, is when our ego says we need to come from fear. I need to be a fear of you. You look different than I do. You know how I've learned to overcome everything that I have found outside of my spiritual perception and human perception? Is to explore it. When I was growing up in my community of Ventura, Southern California, I didn't have the experience of being around a whole lot of gay people. So when I went to the school of ministry and entered into the school, there was a man there named Frank Carusi. And he was as gay as they came. I mean, he had big pink glasses. And he pronounced on the first night of the school of ministry, when there was about 40 of us in school, all up introducing themselves, it was like, my name is Frank, I'm gay. It was just like that. And I said, hey, if this guy is this open, this is how I'm going to find out about what it means to be gay. You see, as I showed earlier, and Jenny Carr was the first one that brought in the straw concept of showing our perceptions, is many of us have a perception about like so. Especially when it comes to things that fit outside of our, what we call regular experience of life, such as somebody being gay. And so I knew that I wanted to expand it a little or a lot. And you know how I did it? I went up and I became friends with it. And we talked. And over the next year, I asked him every question that you could ever think of asking a gay person. Everything. And how I further learned is, at that time, AIDS was just coming into becoming a thing. It's when the original quilt was just being put together, where every time a family member would die of AIDS, they were quilting, they put this magnificent quilt together. That's when it was all just getting started, back in the mid-'80s. And so how I further found out is, I always wondered, what's it like to go to a gay bar? If you're not gay, have you ever been to a gay bar? If you have, it's great.
Oh, yeah. It's hot.
You don't have to worry about who you dance with. And usually you won't get turned down. So I'm on Hollywood and Vine. Hollywood and Vine. Lots of gay bars up and down that street. And boy, did my eyes get open that night. I have never seen a man walking around in chains. Chains! And hardly anything else. I was nervous about going to the bathroom by myself. Because you see, my perception was that if I'm just a man in a gay bar, they're all assume I'm gay. Anybody had that perception? It's not so at all. They can pick you up that you're straight a mile away. And when here's what? No, my jaw's open. And I asked a simple question to my friend Frank. I said, how come nobody hit on me while I was there? A little insulted. I had my wife with me, that might have been a problem. Said the reason is, why would we need to hit on a straight guy when there's all these gay men around? Oh. How many of us have walked around fearful of things such as that? See, how we shift our perception and how we understand is that we're not just this one little grain of sand, but when we can start getting out of our own little meanness, and see, wow, I wonder what life is like from another grain of sand's perspective. That's what it what it means to shift and to grow into our spiritual perception.